Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello, I'm Stephanie Bickel, founder and CEO of Speak by Design. And joining me today is my friend and a woman I admire, Carrie Schochet, CEO and founder of Purple Squirrel. And before I let Carrie describe Purple Squirrel more, I wanted to share that we have a unique relationship. We are in similar businesses, but they serve our client in a different way. I'm more on the executive training side, and Carrie's on the recruiting and executive search side. But we also went to the same college. We went to the University of Notre Dame, are huge Fighting Irish fans. And I always think that stamps people when they, or does something when you've gone to the same university, especially that one. We won't go on and on about it. But Carrie, yes, tell people what you think is important for them to know about Purple Squirrel.
Well, so I started Purple Squirrel Advisors about 5.5 years ago. And really my goal was to do something different and show a different side of the recruiting industry. I spent 10 years in a global firm, and at times I felt like the recruiting process was a transaction. And it's really anything but. We're dealing with human beings, we're dealing with job transitions, and we're dealing with companies who have very critical hiring needs. And so those human elements can't be put to the side. They have to be actually front and center. And so that's really our purpose, is to bring extra care and attention to some of those underlying factors. And so what I would say we're really good at is finding a great fit and really making matches between the executive and the company. And we've got some kind of secret sauce, some things that we do a little bit differently that help us with that. But I would say that in a nutshell is our differentiator and our passion.
Yes. Oh, no, it's so true. Everybody I've ever met from Purple Squirrel embodies that so well. Okay. So COVID hits and your business is affected because your clients are affected. What kind of dilemmas did you see your clients facing from COVID?
Yeah, so it's been such an interesting, I would say, journey over the last 4 months. And the challenges we faced early on when the crisis hit are different than the challenges we're facing today. When this all kind of hit us in March, many of our clients just went into defensive mode of, we can't make any hires. We've got to wait and see what's going to happen here. We want to see how our industry is going to be affected. And many of our searches just went into a holding pattern. And then slowly but surely things started to come back, and people started to wrap their heads around, okay, well, we can't interview in person, but this is still a critical need. Can we run an interview process virtually? And they in fact could. And that was, I think, a great learning for all of us to see that we could be successful in a virtual environment. So we had a lot of clients that were able to make that shift and hire virtually. And so that's been really interesting. But one of the things that is still a challenge is the onboarding piece. Mm-hmm. And so we've got the hire, but now how do we onboard? How do we introduce them to their colleagues? How do we, really get to know each other and build rapport that is important in some of those earlier stages. And so those are some of the challenges they're still facing. We've got different sectors of clients. We've got family business clients, and we've got a lot of private equity clients. And we're finding that our private equity clients are in, right now, and I don't want to overgeneralize, but many of them are more comfortable with moving ahead, whereas some of our other types of clients are still in cautious mode, and the uncertainty is causing them to keep things on pause. So that's overall what we've seen.
Yeah, I'm thinking of for virtual interviewing, let's focus on virtual interviewing and onboarding. For the interview, if you can show that you can provide value today in uncertain times, and that it could almost lead to a competitive advantage when things return, oh my gosh, they'll accelerate hiring you. And a lot of a lot of the people I meet think, oh, they may not. This is a hard time. It's like, no, to get that out of your head. If you can show the value today that you can bring in navigating this and bringing a skill that they've never had before, instead of just what you would have done in normal times. It is different. Virtual interviewing, at least the strategies are different for those interviewing. And then I'm thinking of, you do so much with CFOs. Like you do so much work in finance, and this is a finance heyday. I mean, finance has never been more important to an organization.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I assume that you're seeing a surge in finance hires right now.
We are. So we're definitely seeing, if you didn't have a strong CFO coming into this, it definitely was very, quickly obvious, and it became a real pain point, because getting through the PPP process of qualifying for those loans and then figuring out what is the best strategy, how do we handle the PPP loan? And, there's just so many complexities, and then it continued to evolve and change. And so if you didn't have a strategic CFO and somebody that was really on top of this, really big challenge. It also really depended on who you were banking with in terms of how that process went. So many, many challenges in the CFO seat. But I also wanted to touch on something that you said about virtual interviewing, and that the strategy of virtual interviewing is different because you have this different feeling when you're sitting at a computer versus being in a room with somebody. It can sometimes be hard to convey your interest, and things like camera angle, are you, really, is your posture showing your interest? So there's things that you just don't realize are important. And even see with my hands, I talk with my hands. If you can't see my hands, you might not know that I'm excited about the topic. And so there's things like that that are really important in a virtual interview that people may not have had a time to practice, haven't had practice with.
Yeah. I mean, what we're advising people is your setting has never been more important. You've got to create a studio, get light on the face, show your shoulders. Your hands have to come up for a moment and be released, or people will not know you have energy, like you said.
Exactly.
Maybe the worst thing I've seen is 2 screens in an interview. Like the person wanted to be able to look over at their notes during the interview. I'm like, no, you cannot look off the screen.
Right. Yeah.
Stay on the screen. You will look so distracted and uninterested.
Yeah.
And then the connection piece of it is already personal. You've got so much you can talk about in your background, but then finding the right things to talk about and avoiding some others. So for example, I had a person who was in his bedroom. So you've got his bed right. I mean, how odd to be viewing in your bedroom.
No, you can't have a bed, and you can't have a cluttered space that looks like a just complete, where it's disorganized, because immediately they're going to say, okay, well, their shelves are disorganized. They've got papers all over their desk. They must not be organized. And so there's really, you've got all these indicators and clues that they can pick up on just by what's in your background.
Right. But then the virtual onboarding piece, where I'm hearing people struggling, is just that they don't know how to meet everybody.
Right.
And what they're getting to know about people are usually very personal things because they're meeting each other on Zoom, but they're not getting the professional connecting that would happen if they were attending group meetings regularly and roaming the halls.
Yeah. Yeah, that does make it hard. And I just wonder, I've heard some best, some things that other companies are doing where literally initiating with other department heads. So if you're placing somebody in finance, for example, and they're going to work closely with, head of supply chain, head of operations, head of marketing, all of those, other groups, that the CEO would initiate intros and kind of set the expectation of, I'd like you to spend 30 minutes to an hour. Here's what I want you to cover. And, there should definitely be elements of probably both, role and personal, just getting to know each other.
Yeah. Because the personal, that is very helpful in building the relationships, but it does feel like you can get lost easily in this vacuum. And what I think, if I were HR, I would be telling everybody in the business, when we have a new person, you have a responsibility to, in that meeting, call out, oh, Steve's new. Everyone, Steve's in our meeting today. Here's what I know about Steve, why we're so excited to have him. And Steve, how about you walk us through your background?
Right.
Steve has that perfected. He's been interviewing. He knows what to say. He won't be nervous. And just getting his name out in a group of 30 people on a Zoom, oh, you've helped him so much. Now it's a warmer connection when he talks to those people again. And then I would say, Steve, it's on you to set up your one-on-ones with people.
Right.
Because no one's going to do that for you.
Yeah, no, I think that is great to, make sure that introduction happens. And one thing that we've seen companies do also is maybe including people in the interview process that wouldn't have been included prior just because of the virtual environment. So we've actually got a very senior level finance person interviewing this evening, and he's going to get a chance to meet the rest of the C-suite who hasn't met yet. And so that is going to be really, helpful for him just because the relationships are already in motion and he knows that there was buy-in from the rest of those leaders for his hire, because he doesn't yet have an offer on the table. And so I think that's been a good strategy as well, and something that, our candidates appreciate and our clients are happy to spend the time there. I think it also demonstrates the importance of the role that the company's having all these different people participate in the process. I don't know, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I just love that, Carrie, because there is something that's easier in this environment, which is you can schedule, you can align schedules more easily and
Right.
get the whole leadership team on a Zoom or whatever technology you're using. And before that would have been so hard to coordinate. Even for global companies, you're seeing a lot more networking globally than we've ever seen before. And you're making me think that should be a part of the interview too, is even meeting people in other geographies. If you think their role will be, they have a counterpart in another country, why not? Go ahead and open that door now.
Well, yeah. And the other interesting thing about this virtual kind of world and meeting people is that when we're in person, I think it's the natural tendency to maybe gravitate towards the people in the room that we already know. They're familiar, we know them. And so all of a sudden in a virtual setting, I've been to a number of meetings where we'll go into breakout rooms and it's random. And all of a sudden I've met people that I've probably been in the same room with many times, but we didn't know each other. And so we really never had a chance to connect and talk. And now in this virtual setting, we're being put in a breakout room where all of a sudden we're meeting and talking and getting to know each other. So there's some interesting dynamics that have happened there just with, I think,
technology. The breakout technology is so good that there's a part of me as a trainer, I don't want to go back to where I lose control over people again. I'm trying to set them to different rooms. Where's my room?
Yeah.
I've got to grab my bag. Oh, I'm going to get coffee. Here it's like, no, you're off. And you can send them, pull them back when you want them. And they can network, and they're craving that right now. So we're seeing the breakout function be very effective too in the technology, which is why I think Zoom is getting so much attention more than the others.
Right.
So the virtual onboarding that I've seen be best, because there are companies that are doing it 100% virtual in all day Zooms. They take breaks every 90 minutes, sometimes every hour. They're doing some break where people stand up, but they are making it so lively and engaging, where I see other companies like, we'll catch up later. We're just going to table the onboarding and the training, and we'll get to it when we can do it the way we have before. Mm-hmm. It's just interesting to see the divide.
Yeah, so one of the things I'm curious about are have you seen any like sort of virtual icebreaker type questions or, other ways just to kind of get people maybe in the mode or like, I think icebreakers can be interesting. I've done them in different types of groups that I've been in, but I'm just curious about your thoughts on virtual icebreaking conversations to kind of warm things up in this particular setting.
I went to a whole networking event that was just essentially icebreakers. It was, I think, 2 hours of icebreakers. And you just kept getting sent into rooms with activities. And
Okay.
I mean, they were mostly discussion questions, and then you'd come back and you'd enter your responses, and then they'd pull out a few to discuss. But there was literally no facilitation other than you're being sent off, you come back, sent off, come back. But it was really great for getting to know a large number of people. Speed dating format, truly. But it was more meaningful because the questions were really good. There's a website called icebreaker.io.
Okay.
You can go there and choose charades, virtual charades, all kinds of games virtual Pictionary, things like that. And then you can create basically a guide, like an event guide for people out of these virtual games. And that's getting quite popular. But the virtual icebreakers, there's so many creative things you can do in the beginning that, even one that I find enjoyable, just easy to do, is everybody hold up an object in their space and explain why it's there.
Okay.
And people have some weird things. Yeah. Have you seen things? Have you seen some good icebreakers?
I have seen a few. I'm trying to remember. I mean, I can't think of any off the top of my head. Of course, I'm on the spot and I can't think of any. I've enjoyed them. And I think it's, I always love, I've even something simple like what's the last book you read and what did you like about it? I think, people have been maybe spending their time doing some different things over, the last several months. And so I think it's interesting to hear, what people are doing, what they're reading. And so, I personally find them interesting, because then I'm finding myself jotting down notes of, I'm going to check out that book and, or recipe or whatever it is. So obviously, the things that have become hard to find though, that's an interesting thing too. Like I wanted to make a cookie recipe and I couldn't find bread flour and it called for bread flour. So I just think there's all these interesting discussion points and it's fun to kind of hear what other people are experiencing.
Yeah. Anytime you can do something new on Zoom, you've made the meeting already more exciting, the presentation more exciting. And so I'm thinking for interviewing, that's it. You might not think, this isn't a training. I don't need to do an icebreaker. Yes, you got to be interesting.
Right.
Really interesting. And so even those questions about what book you last read, even the household chore you're excelling at right now.
Yeah.
I'm really good at dishes.
My gosh.
So good at those dishes.
Yeah.
All right. Let's think of the whole life cycle of the employee. So they've interviewed, they're getting onboarded, the job is starting, they have projects, they're virtual still. What kinds of problems and opportunities are there in virtual work?
Well, first of all, I think there's definitely pluses and minuses, and we haven't figured this out yet. So I think the biggest kind of takeaway or thing that I think everybody's learning right now is the need to be nimble and flexible and trying new things. So one of the things that I've seen work is just, taking some time in screen sharing, so that's, because we can't sit side by side. And so depending on the level of the hire, you might need to schedule a 2-hour Zoom meeting and literally share screen and walk through, a different process or something along those lines. And so I think that screen sharing is really an important part, depending on the level. And then I would say another challenge, and I don't know if it's specific to the onboarding phase but I think there's also a real habit of over scheduling right now. And so packing a schedule too tight. And then if there's a question that comes up along the way, there's not enough, you can find yourself trapped or, oh my gosh, I'm in meeting to meeting. Where do I take my break? And I think we can overwhelm new hires at time with some of that overscheduling of meetings because we're not accommodating, certain breaks that you would typically have in a workday. So those are just a couple of my thoughts, but would love to hear what you're seeing as well.
Yeah. Well, I just love that. Just very practical tip of the screen share. Because people think that, I don't know if that's necessary. It really is. Anything you can make crystal clear to new people, and I don't think it's beneath them. They're going to be curious. This is when they're most open to learn, and they listen a little bit better because it's new. I was even thinking recording recording how you do something.
Right.
I've been using Loom. I don't know if you're familiar with Loom, Loom. But Loom, you can make a recording and you're on video in the corner and it shows your screen and you can show how to do something and just send it to them so they can watch at their discretion when the time is right. Yeah. So anytime you can make a recording, and then not only is that something that's in your library of recordings for that individual, but then the next time you hire someone, you've got that recording that you can just send them and say, here's how to do it, watch it, and then come back to me if you have questions.
Right.
That's really good. And the other thing that I've been recommending is put your question that let's say you're my boss and I have a question for you. Should we do it this way? And then right under it, I write my answer, what I think your answer is going to be. I think we should do it this way because of X, Y, and Z. So tell the new person that while we're working remotely and we're not talking as often as needed, please write me your question, but then write what you think the answer is so I understand and learn from you, because maybe you know something I don't know, and I start to understand how you think as well. And then if I don't get back to you, you can assume that it's good.
Yeah.
It's fine. That's fine.
Respond to me if I'm off track, type of thing. Yeah. No, that's good. But I think one of the other what we've been doing is definitely those regular checkpoints. And so having a scheduled meeting, and you don't want to overdo it. And I definitely have heard of some people who have had the feedback of, we're doing all these, check-ins and it's too much. So I think you have to be careful about that. If you wouldn't typically check in, twice a day, then we shouldn't be checking in maybe twice virtually, but there definitely should be scheduled time to meet and go through, again, a time to really cover what's happening, what are the questions, what are the issues we need to talk through, and all of that, because you don't have that ad hoc time throughout the day where you can just pop into somebody's office. So
anytime you can give people routine in a period of time where there's no routine or feels like everything's willy-nilly, that's helpful. That's really helpful. But you also just made me think of a story. So I have a client who's very frustrated with one of her employees who's just quiet during this whole time. It's like pulling teeth, getting them to say what they're working on, give the status update. It's been torturesome. And she's looking for every way she can terminate this person. Although she's got a heart and doesn't want to do it right now. And so I was just thinking, if there's any way people could be better for their bosses, it is to update them, that morning check-in, that check out at the end of the day. Oh, your bosses will love you. Here's what I'm working on today. Here's how I'm prioritizing my day. And then at the end, here's what I did. Here's what I need from you. So helpful. It's so helpful. It's a dream, really.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, I think that any way that we can kind of show up for our colleagues too, it really makes a difference right now to know, okay, we may not be able to, have lunch together or be in the same room, but I'm still here for you. I'm here to help. If you've got something going on, hey, let me know. I want to help you. And I had a team member just recently, hey, let me take that off your plate. I can tell you're slammed, or you've got a really full calendar. I got it, and so just being able to provide that assurance and speaking up, I think, is a great thing to do, especially virtually.
Yeah. Well, and you're getting onto a great topic. So for virtual leadership, where you are getting people excited and aligned to a new vision for the company, and you have that warmth and kindness of I'm here to help, oh, you'll have people wanting to help and they'll try to take things off your plate. That the compassion that we're looking for from leaders has never been higher.
Right.
I mean, it's almost more important than, I felt like vulnerability was the thing we always talked about, but now it's really just this compassion and empathy.
Yes.
Empathy.
Oh yeah. And that's a big one, because like the whole idea of safety is such a big topic, and it's a sensitive issue, and we have to be aware that what we're comfortable with might not be what somebody else is comfortable with. And so I think just even like that self-awareness and recognition that everybody's having a different experience. You have to think of the fact that maybe one of your employees has had a close friend or family member that has, had a very, bad case of COVID and so they're on, or they've got a family member or themselves who have an underlying health condition, but maybe that's not my experience. And so our feelings about safety could be coming from very different perspectives. And I think that's very important as leaders to understand that there's a lot of different emotions here.
A lot of different emotions. And I just heard a leader was practicing what she was going to say, her COVID message. And what made it so compelling to me was that it just flew out of her mouth. You could tell it wasn't scripted because she just couldn't wait to share it. It was, folks, we know that everybody's worried about coming back to the office. We're not going to come back to the office. No one's going to make you come back to the office if you don't want to come back to the office. We know that you're worried about school and your kids and whether they're going to be in school or out of school. We're all going to just be really nice to each other right now. Yeah. And it flew out of there. And I thought, that's going to be so effective.
Right.
Because people are going to just feel like that she is just trying to rally everybody up. It was a cheerleader.
Right.
Cheerleader leader, versus what, it is nice to have somebody who's super nurturing, but there was energy to it that people need right now.
Well, they do, and they need communication, especially like if a company might be having like a financial challenge, and if the employees start to worry, if somebody's not communicating to them, they're going to make assumptions about what's happening. And I think that is another thing that we as leaders have to be really careful about is, communicating so that there's not assumptions being made. And then people living in fear of what's going to happen. And if they don't hear anything, they're going to create their own ideas of what is going to happen. So
it's also the action. So it's what they're hearing and then what they see leadership doing. Mm-hmm. So if leadership pulls away and gets more distant or has meetings with fewer people or it does get people spiraling. And you think of the dimension of put intimacy on one side and distance on the other. And a leader has to kind of go back and forth between being distant and intimate with coworkers. Right now is the time to be more interested in getting to know people and talking to people. And I heard a story of this vice president was telling me that his CEO, who's a few levels above, global CEO, made a point of scheduling a meeting with him. And he said, he's never done this before. Yeah. and so we were working on the conversation, but getting him, I thought how brilliant of that CEO to be reaching out to levels that he wouldn't necessarily, to help them feel more comfortable and appreciated and genuinely take the time to get to know them. Yeah. And it was a great conversation, very personal conversation. And he says, I am so happy to have this tight relationship with the CEO. I don't think that would have happened had we not had COVID.
Right. Yeah, those are the silver linings that I guess we have to look for. So some of these opportunities that might not have been available previously with everybody traveling around the globe.
Mm-hmm. Well, what do we think is going to happen, Carrie? Do we have any predictions we could kind of close with that?
I guess it's funny because it's so hard to plan. So I've been journaling actually. So journaling has been a really good activity for me to do during, I've really started and kind of worked on that habit during COVID. And one of the things that I'm just really focused on is really kind of trying to stay present and making the best decisions I have with the information I have today, but also having backup plans in place. So that, I know that sounds kind of contradictory, but for example, I have 3 little kids and they're going to be starting school in a few weeks live, but I have no expectation that they're going to be able to stay in school through the winter. So we're kind of already planning, okay, well, if we're going to be virtual all winter, do we want to go to Florida? Or, it's just, that's kind of what's in my head right now. What about you?
So well, I was thinking, I liked what you said. So the decisions, you making decisions is
Right.
staying in action, being productive, and instead of waiting, that's where I know that I don't want to do is taking a step forward every time. And I am very excited by what we learned from this.
Yes.
And what people started building during this time. We've built a university, an online university where people can come in and watch our videos at their leisure. And just to try to make things easier for people who had a hard time scheduling their coaching sessions. So the possibilities start to feel endless with where things could go, at least from our business standpoint.
That's awesome. I can't wait to hear more about your this library when you launch it.
Oh, yes. Well, thank you. Oh, Carrie, I've enjoyed our conversation so much, and I look forward to the next time.
Thank you. Me too. Have a great night.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.